Okay, so I know a lot of you guys been asking when Gazelle is going to release a belt-driven bike, and they're finally doing it. So I'm excited to be introducing the Gazelle Ultimate C380. So basically, it's their ultimate platform, as some of you might be familiar with the Ultimate T10. You know, basically the same frame and that sort of thing. But now we have it with the Enviolo 380 Hub, along with the Gates belt drive. So I think this is a great option, and I'm pretty excited about this bike, and it's pretty comfortable. It's got the nice low step frame, suspension seat post, which I definitely appreciate, and I was riding it. It's pretty comfortable and pretty nimble as well. The Ultimate is kind of their premium collection. They have a couple different models in the US specifically. They have the Ultimate T10, which has the same low step frame as this, but it has a 10-speed derailleur along with the Bosch Performance Line motor. They also have the Ultimate T10 Plus, which comes in a standard frame, so it has the standard top tube, but you also have the option for a mid-step, which just drops the top tube down a little bit. That bike is kind of their highest performance bike available, so it has the Generation 4 Bosch speed motor along with a 10-speed derailleur. So the Ultimate C380 is a nice addition to that lineup. You have the T10, which is $3,700, and then you have the T10 Plus, which is $4,000. This one is $4,000 as well, which I know might be different prices in different markets. I know these bikes are available in other places, but my shops are in the US. We're primarily talking about, you know, this bike here in the US, as that's when it's just introduced. I think it might have been in Europe for a short period of time before it came here, but I think it's a good value. I think it's, for us, it's one of the lower priced belt-driven bikes that we have available. The belt's really nice, low maintenance, really easy to use with the Enviolo Hub. You'll find all the things that are characteristic of the Ultimate, which is hydraulic disc brakes, has a head shock. This is kind of a proprietary shock from Gazelle. Just gives a little bit of cushion there. We'll go over, you know, more of the details, but overall, riding the bike, I found it to be pretty comfortable. You have that adjustable stem, so you can get a pretty upright seating position. Right now, it's kind of in a moderate seating position, but if you wanted to sit more upright, you definitely can pull this back and get you know, pretty well upright with the ergonomic grips and comfortable saddle. The suspension seat post, it has some adjustment. Right now, it's kind of on the softer side. But I was kind of enjoying that on some ways, just feeling like I'm riding in a Cadillac or something, which is kind of cool. Which sometimes in my head, a bike like this with a narrower tire, I'm often feeling like, oh, well, it's going to be a bit of a rougher ride, but that suspension seat post does quite a bit. And, you know, there's other options if you wanted to do like even upgraded suspension seat post and that sort of thing. So the wheels on this bike are 28 inches, also can be considered 700C, which is really the same size rim that you'll find on a road bike or a hybrid bike, that sort of thing. And I guess I could consider this more of like a hybrid bike. The tires on here are 28 by 1.75, not super wide, but I think wide enough, and I found it to be really comfortable. I think it's just a matter of really getting the tire pressure set up really properly for your specific body weight, and there's a pretty wide range there that you can run. So this will go from 45 psi to 70 psi, and if you go lower pressure, it's going to be a bit more comfortable, but maybe not as efficient. Right now, I think we have these set somewhere around 60 psi, and again, that's going to vary depending on your body weight as well as you know, the type of terrain and stuff like that you're riding on. These tires are the Schwalbe Energizer Plus. So Plus means that they have that extra puncture protection. And the Energizer is an e-bike specific tire, really made to be most efficient and really kind of optimize the use of the motor, etc. Not really sure how they kind of make that determination or how they do that exactly. I mean, one of the things, from my understanding, a lot of the e-bike tires, they have a little bit of a thicker sidewall to them. This one specifically rated to go up to 50 kilometers per hour, so they test it specifically for that. And this is something that Germany, they have some regulations around these things, and these are a German tire, which I think they perform really well. The one thing I found, you know, coming from riding a lot of bikes with wider tires, which I generally tend to prefer, This thing really rolls nicely. It's really smooth, pretty quick, very nimble, and it feels pretty lightweight, which is nice. Standard quick release up front on the axle, and as I mentioned before, we have that little head shock. We just get, I think, about 30 millimeters of travel with the head shock, and really plenty to take, you know, the edge off of some of the bumps in the road. I'd say this type of setup would work well for primarily urban riding on paved surfaces. It can work in some, you know, packed dirt or gravel, that sort of thing. But I think you might want to look at some different tire options if you're riding a really loose stuff. Or I'd say maybe in some ways this might not be what the bike is specifically designed for. I know some people ride like a rigid frame with a narrow tire on like really rough terrain, but it wouldn't be my first choice for that sort of thing. Yeah, let's check out the drivetrain, because I think that's one of the things that makes this bike particularly unique. So this bike's set up with the Enviolo C380 made by NuVinci, or historically is most widely known as the NuVinci Hub, but this is now it's known as Enviolo. And it's a continually variable transmission, so you don't have stepped gears there. So when you're shifting the gears, it's just kind of almost like changing the volume dial in its incremental adjustments, as opposed to those individual steps what you would have on a normal internally geared hub. This is the 380, so it's one of the wider ranges of gears that they have available. So it's 380 degrees of gear range. This has the Gates belt drive on it, which is really nice, super low maintenance. And overall, I find that this drivetrain is really easy to use, really great for riders that just want something, you just don't worry about it. You just want to get out on the bike and enjoy yourself and not worry about maintaining it too much. I mean, you know, you'll have little maintenance elements like the tires and brakes and stuff like that, but as far as the drivetrain, you really shouldn't find all that much maintenance. But if you're riding a lot, which I think some people might choose this type of drivetrain specifically for that purpose, you'll find very far distances between the need for service, upwards of several thousand miles. So as with the Ultimate T10, the derailleur version of this bike comes standard with the Bosch Generation 3 Performance motor. And this motor has been upgraded for this year. This motor has 65 Newton meters of torque, which is pretty good amount, and I find that this bike performs really well in all the variety of different assist levels. The torque is really what you're going to find to be most beneficial in starting out and going up hills, and really I think it's pretty fitting for this. With this new Generation 3 motor, they removed the reduction gear that you found on previous versions of the motor, and it works really well pedaling with and without power. You also notice it has this really large chain ring here because it doesn't have the reduction gear. But let's check it out from the other side. You can talk a bit more about how the motor works. So the motor on here will assist you up to 20 miles an hour, and you can ride it with no assistance, just riding like a normal non-electric bike, or you can ride through a variety of assistance levels, starting around 50% assistance, upwards of 300% at the top level of assistance. And basically you could think of it in rudimentary terms, like you take one pedal revolution and the bike is going to take anywhere from a half revolution or upwards of 3 revolutions on top of that. It's definitely more advanced than that, but it's kind of give you an idea of more or less how it works. The bike provides assistance in a very seamless way, and really I find it to be one of the smoothest systems on the market. And it does so by using 3 sensors, and I think Bosch is really advanced in this way, in the way that they use their sensors. As some people may or may not know, Bosch is actually really advanced in that specific sector of sensors, because they borrow some of the technology of their bikes from other areas that they work in, and sensors is one of them. So it will sense how fast you're pedaling, how hard you're pedaling, as well as how fast the bike is going overall. So it's sensing how fast and how hard you're pedaling inside the motor, and sensing how fast you're going based on this speed sensor here. So there's a magnet here, and then there's a sensor right here on the inside of the chainstay. And with that information, it's taking 1,000 senses per second, and it provides a really seamless result. And the idea is that it really just assists you and kind of amplifies what you put into it as opposed to just taking over. And I think with that, it gives a very predictable experience, and it's really my favorite type of motor system. This bike, along with most of the other Ultimate bikes, has the Bosch integrated power tube battery. This one specifically is the 500 watt hour, and it will give you a good amount of range. So the larger the watt hours, the more range you get out of the bike. With this one, I'd say if you're using the highest level of assistance, you're probably going to get somewhere around 25 or so miles, but if using the lower levels of assistance, I think you can get upwards of 70 miles, perhaps even more if you are riding the bike more efficiently, maybe not as fast or maybe not as many hills or headwind, etc. But you can charge the battery on the bike or off the bike. If you wanted to charge it on the bike, you could just open this port right here, and the charger goes in here. Charging the battery takes about 4 or 5 hours. And I want to note, I know that this little rubber flap could be a bit finicky, and usually there's kind of a bit of a technique to it where almost like push this and give just like a slight bend to the flap before pushing it in. But you should be able to just push it in like that and snap it in place. So just something to be mindful of. It's a little trick to that there. But I just want to show you guys taking the battery off so you can see how that works. I'm going to flip the bike around so you can see it a little bit better because the key is on the other side. So this bike, as with pretty much all Gazelle bikes, they have this integrated frame lock. And the way they work in the Netherlands is the key is what's called retaining. They have retaining and non-retaining locks. And this one, you can actually only remove the key by locking the lock. And I should note, this key is the same key as the battery. That's why I'm referencing this at this point. But basically, in order to remove the key, you're just going to unlock it, lock this frame lock, which locks the rear wheel, and then I can remove the key, which in turn, at that point, I can use this key to remove the battery. So I just stick the key in here, turn it, and you notice that the battery doesn't release all the way. So if I try to pull this off, it won't come off even though it's unlocked. You have to actually just push this little clip here, and that's how it releases. But if you see, there's a little clip right here. But mainly I want to just show the underside of the battery. It has the same type of port that we have for charging. So you can charge the battery on or off the bike. Some other interesting things to note is that this does have a proprietary cover on it. So if you wanted an extra battery or something like that, say you wanted to have a battery to swap back and forth, that sort of thing, could be good to get an additional cover so they match up there. So I'm just going to insert this back in. Just put the bottom side first. And then I do need to turn the key to put it back in place. Now at this point it's not fully inserted, but I'm going to want to just push it all the way in, and you'll see that it's fully seated. Remove the key. Usually I like to just give the battery a little tug, make sure that it's fully seated there, and then I can unlock the rear lock again. So I should note that there's also a chain that you can attach to this rear lock, which makes it easy to affix the bike to things. It's not necessarily going to be the highest security, but it's good for the real quick run in the store, or if you're at a park or a cafe, as this lock can often be referred to as a cafe lock. Being that the bike might be in your sight, but you just want to prevent somebody from running off from it, but you know, that sort of thing. To turn the bike on, we just hit the power button right on the top of this display. You just tap it for a second. It takes a couple seconds to turn on. Now I should note this is the Bosch Purion display. All displays are compatible with this bike, but this is the display that comes standard here. Pretty simple, really easy to use, but it gives you all the basic information that you might need to operate the bike. By default, you're going to be in off mode. It's really no assistance, riding just like a normal non-electric bike, and this type of bike I think performs well in that sort of scenario. If you hit the plus button, you go to the first level of assistance, which is about 50%. Second is about 100%, 150, around 200 and around 300% on turbo mode at the top level. And at that level, it really takes very little effort to get this bike going pretty well. You can also see some different information on here. Now you have the miles per hour here, you have the battery information. If you hold the minus button down, you can see some information down here on the bottom. You have the tripometer. If I wanted to reset the tripometer, I just hold the plus and minus button down for a couple of seconds, and then that will reset that. Hold the minus button again, and we get the total. That's the odometer. That you can't reset, and that information is being read from the motor. As with most of these details, the display doesn't really have much internal memory here. It's just really reading information from the motor specifically. I hold the minus button down. Again, we see range. Now this range is showing you in turbo mode, we're getting 31 miles. So it's a little off of my prediction before, but I always try to be conservative with those range estimates. If you really wanted to get very detailed information, you can go, Bosch has a page on their website. It's called the Bosch Range Estimator, and you can actually put in all your parameters, what motor, what battery you have, what type of terrain you're riding on, even what type of headwind, hills, or you're doing stop and go, and it will factor in all those details and be able to give you a really good prediction of what things might look like there, which is pretty cool. But I should note that this number is going to update, one, based on the assist level that you're in, but it will also update based on the past mile and a half of riding. So if you're riding more efficiently, this number might go up. If you're riding less efficiently or in less ideal conditions, that number will change as well. I think it's nice to have that, that information displayed. So I held it down one more time. We get back to the just the straight assist level. And some other details to note on the display. You can turn the headlight on by just holding the plus button down for a couple of seconds. You'll see this little light icon show up, and that you'll see that the light is on. So you have a headlight and tail light, which are running off the bike's battery, which is really nice not to have to worry about that so much. I think sometimes people come ask and say, well, what happens if the battery dies? But actually the way that the system works, it always leaves a couple % of the battery left, so that you'll always have lights, because that is an important safety feature. So it's better that it actually cuts assistance before it cuts the lights. I mean, some people might disagree on that. Maybe you never ride at night and you want to just be able to ride as much of the battery as possible. But the reality is it's really not leaving that much there. So I wouldn't be all that concerned about that. The one other function I want to talk about while we're talking about the display here is what's called walk assist. In order to activate the walk assist, basically you just tap this button on the bottom and then you hold the plus button. So that will just push the wheel along just a couple miles an hour, and just enough that it gives you an easier time pushing the bike up a hill, or if you're got the bike loaded up and you're walking through a crowd or something like that. It's a nice way to go. So while we're up here, I wanted to show the brakes and the shifter and such. You also notice that they have these nice ergonomic grips, which I think it's kind of like a synthetic leather material. Has nice padding to it, but not super soft. I don't think you want it too soft, but just enough that makes a nice touch point, and it has that little bit ergonomic shape to it, so it is pretty comfortable. But as I was talking about the Enviolo Hub before, I wanted to show just how the shifter works. Right now it's kind of in its lowest gear, but actually if you twist it towards you, you'll go into a higher gear. And you'll notice that it's not like clicking as I'm shifting, it's just kind of more gradual. And that's all that you do in order to shift the gears. The nice thing about this, you can shift it when you're stopped, as I am doing now. Really no harm in doing so. And you can also shift it while you're pedaling, although it is recommended that you don't put too much pressure on the pedals while you're shifting. Just give it a little bit of room to engage into those different gears. And I think that ultimately that's just going to give you a more prolonged life to the shifting mechanism, the cables and such. I think the hub can handle it, but I think just the shifting elements, it's just putting more pressure on them. And never really force it. You should have the range here, and And if you need more, sometimes you might have to pedal for the range of the gears to adjust a little bit more. And for the brakes on the bike, we have the Shimano hydraulic disc brakes. The levers on here are MT402s, and it's a 2-finger lever. Really feels pretty nice. This is I think a relatively new model, and they're paired with a 4-piston caliper, which we'll check out in just a second. And for the calipers on here, these are the Shimano MT420, and it's a 4-piston caliper. So 2 pistons on either side. Gives you a little bit more surface area and perhaps a little bit better modulation, so you have a little bit better control over the brake specifically. This is a relatively new caliper, but I've been finding that Gazelle is speccing in a lot more of their bikes, and it performs really well in my experience. And then we have the Shimano 180mm rotors, front and rear. This is a center lock design unique to Shimano specifically, and I found it to work pretty well. So as mentioned before, the bike has an adjustable stem. Right now it's at 35 degrees, but you can go upwards of 65 degrees for that slightly more upright seating position. Right now I find that this is actually set up pretty well for me, and I feel pretty comfortable there. It's kind of a moderate position. And if you wanted to sit, way upright, this will give you the flexibility to do that, especially given that it has the slight sweep to the handlebars as well. So I think that is a really nice touch, and something you'll find pretty common with a lot of the Gazelle bikes is that upright riding position is kind of more traditional as a Dutch style riding. So digging in a little bit more on those comfort features, we can see that the bike is set up with a suspension seat post, so it really takes some of the bumps out. If you wanted to make the suspension a little bit tighter, say you're a heavier rider, or you just want it a bit firmer, you can pull the seat post out, and on the underside you have a bolt that you can tighten up, which basically tightens the spring that's inside the post here. The saddle on here, I was trying to figure out the pronunciation of this name. So this saddle is Selle Royale, is the company that makes it. One of the largest saddle manufacturers in the world, really. So it's Italian. So I think I would call this Loy? I don't know. So whatever it is, it's comfortable. I mean, it's a gel saddle, a little bit more cushy than some of the saddles that I'm used to. So I'm not sure how well it'll perform on super long rides, but I really like it. Definitely fitting for this, and particularly this type of riding position, because it is a little bit wider saddle, but it actually performs really well. So overall, I'm just finding the bike to be really comfortable. The rear rack on the bike, it's a proprietary Gazelle rack, and I think it fits pretty well with the design. We have the stay that's kind of integrated underneath the fender here, and the rack capacity is something specifically I wanted to call out because it goes to 27 kilograms, which is about 59.5 pounds, which is kind of on the higher end as far as rack weight capacities. It has this nice little strap here, but I should note that the rack weight capacity, I think this is important if you ever wanted to put like a child seat on here. This would be a good candidate for that. I mean, not to mention it has the nice step through, but if you put the child seat on here, a lot of times the child seat might weigh upwards of 8 pounds or so, and then it has a weight capacity of around 45 or some up to close to 50 pounds. So between that, you can actually put a child seat on here and perhaps even carry a little bit more cargo in addition to that and not be exceeding the weight capacity of the rack. So I do appreciate that feature for sure. You also have these little notches here if you wanted to run a strap across the top, for example. And you have a really nice integrated Herman's light into the rack here. I think it's a pretty nice design, and it seems like it has pretty good visibility. I haven't ridden this in the dark so much yet, but it does seem like it's a pretty nice setup there. The Ultimate C380 is available in 2 different colors. This is the Mallard Blue matte, which is really nice. It's also available in an olive blue matte color. And it's available in 3 different frame sizes in both of those colors as well. This one happens to be the 53 centimeter, which is what I would prefer to ride for my specific height at 5'8". But it also starts at a 46 centimeter, which is really good for shorter riders. I should note that because this bike has a suspension seat post, it's going to be a little bit taller, and for really shorter riders, if you really want to get it down as far as possible, you might want to opt to remove the suspension seat post there. But you go up to a 57 centimeter in the largest size, and that's quite big. I think that will fit riders upwards of 6'6" or so. So that's nice. I'm sure you can push it a little bit further beyond that, but that's generally what's recommended, somewhere in that area. And all of them are going to be in this low step frame, which is really great for urban riding, really great for riders that maybe they have a knee or a hip issue, want it easier to step in and out of. Also, the bike will work really well with a child seat or really loading that rack up. So having the ease of stepping in and out of it with the loaded rack is quite nice as well. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this review, and I hope you found it to be helpful. I think this bike's going to be really popular, as a lot of people have been requesting similar types of bikes with really low maintenance of the belt drive and everything else. They're just becoming available this late fall of 2020, and I know quantities have been a bit limited, so if you're interested, please reach out. We'll be happy to help you out, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the future videos, and well, see you soon.